there, and welcome to Good Game. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex.
This week, Delson Rowe rides the electric wave in infamous Second Son.
But you find out who the first son is.
Ah, it's exactly who you think it is, but no one you'd expect.
This must be the mothership.
Also, we shuffle the digital deck on Blizzard's new card game, Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft.
Behold the might of Stormwind!
Plus, Infested Planet gets under our skin, and one of our favourite segments from last year returns, Goose's Postcard. But first, can you name the game for this week? Pointless putting Batman and Superman in a fight together because Batman's already won. He's already won the fight.
Batman doesn't even have any superpowers.
He's already won the
just got
fight.
little bat-shaped things that he... Let's just crush some bugs.
Awaiting orders. Grenades on target.
Infested Planet is an indie strategy game with an alien threat that makes a Zerg swarm look like a herd of fluffy kittens.
Now, yes, you could generalize and say this is a strategy game, but it's actually a blend of a whole lot of different ideas. It's got some MOBA elements like maps with lanes and constant creepers spawning in, with a bit of tower defense in there too, and yet it's all single player where just a handful of units go up against countless swarms.
Yeah, so what are we going to call this, Hex? Because a MOBA stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, and this is a single player offline battle arena tower defense strategy game, so I guess we would call this a Spobatism.
Well, that makes sense. In this Spobatisk, you're dropped into maps with just a handful of soldiers against hives that pour out aliens at a frightening rate. It's your job to push up through the hordes and destroy these alien spawning monstrosities.
There's a bit of story told through text boxes, but we've basically told it all already. You're on a planet and there are aliens that need killing, and it doesn't get much more complicated than that. But I always like it when there's some sort of narrative to tie the missions together.
Yeah, and I love how tightly focused the gameplay was. You generally keep your Marines in one tight group so your attention is always on the front lines.
There's a little bit of base building to worry about too, with some buildings giving you access to game-changing perks. For example, one gives all your men grenades, which turns basic infantry into quite powerful soldiers, while another lets you call in helicopter strikes. And if you don't build turrets to defend bases, then you can pretty much guarantee an alien swarm will come along and recapture it.
Resource gathering is also kept pretty simple, with battle points being the only resource you need to worry about. They're mostly earned through destroying hives and setting up bases, or by collecting stashes found around the map. They are quite limited though, so you need to carefully decide how you want to spend them.
Yeah, I like that you constantly have to choose. Do I bring in more infantry? Do I promote the infantry I already have? Do you build defenses or some buildings? So you're pressed into making tough calls, and I love it when a game gives you that kind of pressure, Hex. Classic Spobatism.
Yes. I also like that you can get back any points that you've spent. Buildings can be recycled, and likewise troops can be demoted or sent away for a 100% refund. So if one tactic isn't working, you can fall back and try something completely different. And that means you're never afraid to experiment or just try new things.
Yeah, and you often have to reevaluate your plans. Battles can often become a fight between an immovable object and an unstoppable force. As you start pushing into one part of the map, the aliens manage to overwhelm your defenses somewhere else. And it is exciting racing around trying to stop them from getting a foothold behind your front lines.
Yeah, and those aliens really keep you on your toes too, with mutations that can completely change a battle. One might just bring in new types of aliens, or let them spread out huge minefields all over the map, or even just cause them to go on a massive counter-attack. Yeah, as soon as you start to feel like you've got a handle on things, a few mutations kick in and it just all goes to hell.
Yeah, and some of the missions are really tough. But I liked how completing missions earns you cash that you can spend on unlocking new technology or soldier types. But more importantly, you can hire soldiers for a single mission. So if you find one mission is too hard, you can go and do a few side missions and earn some extra cash, and bring in a couple of extra soldiers to help you out. It just gives you a little lifeline to make sure you never get stuck.
It's quite a lengthy campaign with a lot to work through, but once you've done all that, there's a lot to come back to as well. There's a skirmish mode, which can put you into some randomly generated battles, or you can create your own custom battles and mess around with just about every slider. It is quite fun giving yourself a huge amount of battle points and then turning up the alien horde to maximum. Whoa, hectic.
I would have liked to see a multiplayer mode. I think there's heaps of potential for that, but this was pretty much made by a one-man studio, and balancing a multiplayer RTS is no easy task. Still, I think it's making great strides for the Spelunky genre, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It's 8 from me as well. Now over to the news desk with Goose.
Thanks, guys. The Australian government is considering recommendations to amend the Classification Act to help streamline video game classification. Legislation is being considered which will allow for some games to be classified using an online questionnaire, allowing for the Classification Board to focus their efforts on classifying more contentious MA15+ and R18+ material. The hope is such changes will allow for easy classification of many mobile and digital games that currently go unclassified. Facebook has announced that it will acquire virtual reality company Oculus VR for approximately $2.2 billion. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said in a statement that gaming is just the start for the Oculus, and that it's a new communication platform which can offer experiences such as providing virtual access to classrooms, doctors, or sporting events. Minecraft creator Marcus Persson reacted to the news by saying he has cancelled a deal to create a special Oculus version of Minecraft because Facebook creeps him out. And cult classic sewage management simulator Pipebuster No. 2's is being adapted into a feature film. The movie's plot will loosely focus on the game's sci-fi setting aboard the space station USS Turtelot, and will apparently be a horror film. Relatively unknown director Streaky Bowl has agreed to helm the film and says he hopes to literally scare the crap out of audiences. No exact release date was announced, however, the film's production company DreamWorks say they expect it to drop when it's good and ready. And that's all the news, back to you guys.
Thanks, Goose. Collectible card games have been around for decades, and just like the tabletop genre, there's still a strong community of gamers keeping the culture alive. You may have dabbled in Pokemon trading cards as a kid, or even been caught up in the ever-popular Magic the Gathering craze.
Well, now Blizzard have entered the arena with a digital version of their own collectible card game, based around the characters and class structure of the Warcraft universe.
I will fight with honor. Your soul shall be mine!
It's free to play with some optional microtransactions, and it's called Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft.
Wars are only won upon the anvil of honor.
Victory requires strategy.
War is deception. Only raw power can assure total dominance.
But of course, you could forget all that and just have fun!
A game like this needs to have a really good, clear tutorial, and thankfully Hearthstone has exactly that.
Bring it on.
It starts you off in a series of practice matches with a starter deck playing the mage class. And this is the game in a nutshell. One-on-one turn-based matches, with the goal being to knock your opponent's health down to 0 using a series of attacks and minions from your deck. Once you've completed the tutorial modes, the mage will be unlocked for you to play with, either in the practice mode against AI opponents or online against real players. You must beat an online player or AI opponent of each individual class in order to unlock them, to play them for yourself.
The light shall bring victory.
There's some really nice style to the way they've designed these matches. An advantage of playing a digital version of a card game such as this one is that all the sounds and animations that play out as each round occurs really help to cement the rules and orders of play in your mind.
Job done.
It just makes the basics of the game so easy to pick up, because you're never unsure of what you are or aren't allowed to do next, or why you can't play a certain card.
I can't play that.
I agree, and plus the sound bites are all wonderful nostalgic throwbacks from throughout the Warcraft series, which is great.
Someone call for the doctor. Job's done.
Ah, so many memories.
Here we go. I will say though, playing on PC makes me a lot more impulsive than playing with a physical deck. Hearthstone is digital only at present, but we have dabbled a little bit in Magic the Gathering with actual physical decks, and I think when you've got cards in your hands, you're a lot more considered with your approach to a match. Here, I often find myself speedily clicking my way into some pretty foolish plays.
Yeah, it's very easy to get overconfident, isn't it? But I love it when you know exactly which cards you want to play, and then you hit them all out there, and then you hit end turn even before the animations are finished playing out. Destruction. Once you've unlocked a few decent cards from winning matches and leveling your character, you start to look pretty pimped out, and a few good rounds will have you feeling invincible. That is, until you encounter a player who really knows what they're doing. Someone who anticipates your moves, withholds powerful cards until just the right moment, and can turn the tables and obliterate you in a few swift moves.
Oh, it's devastating, humbling, and thrilling all at once. But it's the kind of game where you still relish in your failures because you have the capacity to learn so much from them.
Yes, and all your cards are quite literally on the table, so you can always see where they went right and you went wrong.
Exactly, and watching and learning how an experienced player uses specific cards to their advantage just leaves you feeling hungry and determined to try out those same moves for yourself the next round.
Love my new recipe.
Gotta say, I got ridiculously hooked on this game, ridiculously fast.
Yeah, me too. And there's so much room to personalize your playstyle, which I liked. Just like in real-world card games, you build and customize your own deck. You'll have a bunch of standard cards that you can use across all of your decks, as well as some that are class-specific. You don't need to have a working knowledge of the World of Warcraft class system, but the way they've interpreted them into this turn-based format is really clever.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how familiar it all felt, even though the genre of game is quite different.
Yeah, well, they've made the same sorts of rules apply, so it just makes sense.
Yeah. I instinctively began leveling a rogue because that was what I used to play in WoW, so I had lots of things like minion assassinations and fast, steady attacks. But going up against other classes, I loved how they felt so true to form. Paladins are infuriating with their constant healing. Shamans are always dropping totems everywhere, and warriors will armor up at every opportunity.
And yet it remains really well balanced, doesn't it? Each class has their own unique ability as well, which can always be used if you have nothing useful to contribute to the table. At first you'll encounter classes that feel overpowered, but really it's just because some players have mastered their class, and it's wonderful to watch. Likewise, once you've found a class and arranged a deck that feels right for you, that winning streak is just sensational.
What are you going to pick? Got quite a full hand of cards. Must be something you want to.
There is certainly a process of trial and error when it comes to learning which of the cards that will help you the most in a match, or even bring you back from the very brink of defeat.
Go away. I'm just sending him back home.
One of the quickest lessons I learnt was the importance of filling your deck with taunt cards of every level.
What do you want?
Taunt cards, once played, must be attacked first, with the exception of some spelled attacks.
I must attack the minion with taunt.
This prevents you from taking damage yourself and buys you extra time to get more minions out on the board. I mean, they truly are invaluable.
Yes, but cards cost mana to use. And mana is dished out as a drip feed of 1 mana crystal per round. So there's a lot of strategy in how you play your low-level cards early on too. When you're building your deck, you need to consider every single stage of a match. There's no point tricking your deck out with heaps of heavy-hitting cards if you're dead before you even have enough mana to use them.
There's also a crafting element to the game. Certain cards can be disenchanted and turned to arcane dust, which can be used to craft more desirable cards.
It costs many cards to create one, however, and I was a bit confused about which cards I could disenchant and which I couldn't and why. I thought all of the crafting stuff could have been explained a bit better. And while this game is free to play, there are of course microtransactions, which allow you to buy random card packs to boost your deck. I don't have anything against this kind of payment model, but there is the arena mode, which costs 150 in-game gold coins to enter, or around $2 US of real-world money. This I find a little shady. The rewards for winning matches in arena mode are substantial, but you have to pay for even the opportunity to compete.
Great job! With every win, you'll upgrade your prize key.
So whether you spend money buying decks or in arena mode, it will get you better cards faster.
Yeah, and I think too for beginners who are going up against more experienced players and having a tough time with their lowly deck, the lure of a $2 card pack is just too tempting because it's not that much money really.
Yes, and the thing with microtransactions is that a lot of little payments add up, and it's easy to overdo it. And Blizzard knows this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a case of the microtransactions will be as big a problem as you make them. You can still happily play through this game without spending any money.
True. It is exciting though, isn't it? I just want to get in there without having to wait.
Yeah, I've already put a few bucks in already. I mean, even in that free play mode, this is the closest I've ever felt to being a problem gambler. If I won a match, I'd be like, yeah, I'm kicking ass, let's just continue this winning streak. But then if I lost, I'd think, no, I mean, I made a mistake there that I can learn from, and next time I'll do better. So just one more round.
One more go. One more go.
Don't you sheep him. Don't you sheep him. Or you could just do that.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Stop saying hello to me.
I mean, I'm thinking about it now, and I want to be playing it.
Yeah, Blizzard know how to get the hooks in, don't they?
They really do. What are you giving it?
Well, what I like most about this game is just how many decisions you're weighing up in your head at all times. It's so rich in strategy. I feel like I've barely scraped the surface of even how to play just one class, let alone all of them. I enjoyed this so much that I think it's probably time I uninstall it. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I just found the learning process of Hearthstone so enjoyable because even in my most spectacular defeats, I was still having a good time. And it made my victories that much sweeter because I felt myself learning and improving. I can't wait to get back in there. I'm giving it 9.5.
No gamer loves desert levels. We may love water levels or forest levels, but there's nothing in the desert, and no gamer needs nothing. On the other hand, that's never stopped a myriad of games from setting their stories in front of a backdrop of scorching sun and rolling dunes. It may all appear very hostile and inhospitable, but a desert can regularly surprise us as a complex and exhilarating landscape to venture across. In contrast to busy, tangled jungles or undulating mountains, the desert is far simpler, both in its character and its design. And many early games took advantage of this, using a monochromatic colour palette, repeating textures, and minimal scenery to create multiple empty screens, stretching far off into a sea of yellow. This minimalistic landscape can often overwhelm the player, greatly disorientating them with endless directions, blinding sandstorms, and illusions of hope, all the while provoking a strong sense of despair. Most of the digital creatures and characters that call desert levels their home have developed a tough outer shell, often literally, making these hostile environments even more dangerous and unwelcoming to the wandering visitor. And while there may be little hope in the desert, it's never completely hopeless. For instance, the emptiness of a desert can be used in games to highlight certain objects, key locations, or perhaps shelter in which to seek refuge from the scorching sun, the blazing heat, and let's not forget the sand. Ah, yes, the sand. It's coarse and it's rough and it's irritating. It gets everywhere. Only recently, however, have we started to see virtual sand adopt some of the graphical personality of its aquatic cousin virtual water, moving underfoot, pouring through cracks, and dynamically flowing as our characters interact with it. Suddenly, this irksome, granular form takes on a beauty that we never expected to see. In fact, the desert holds many wonders that reveal themselves once the harsh, sandy exterior has worn away and the blazing hot sun has dipped below the horizon. Shades of deep, cooling blue wash over the dunes, and ancient, crumbling structures grow even more mystifying underneath starry skies. What was at first a threatening, uncomfortable landscape transforms into a calm, quiet oasis of peace and tranquility. That is until the sun rises, and so too does the temperature. Deserts. They're so hot right now.
Infamous Second Son is an open-world superhero game and the third in the series from Sucker Punch Productions. Set 7 years after the last game, superpower-wielding humans known as conduits are being branded as bioterrorists and hunted down by an organization known as the Department of Unified Protection, or DUP, to placate a frightened public. You play as Delsin, who is part of a fictional Native American tribe. He wears a beanie, He also likes making street art, which is weirdly the first thing you actually do in the game, in an awkward motion controller kind of sequence.
Hex, over the years, we have played a lot of douchebag protagonists in our video games. We've played the unlovable writer, Alan Wake.
I can't believe I was actually happy to see you.
We've partied with the losers in Test Drive Unlimited 2. And who could forget having to rescue these bunch of idiots in Far Cry 3? So much douche. So much douche.
I've done Sambuca since I was 20 years old.
But never before have I disliked a douchebag as quickly as Delson.
So, Eugene, my brother, what do you say? You and me, a couple conduits, we hit the town, you teach me some of those video tricks, I teach you how to pick up girls, and we take our power to the people.
I don't know, Hex, maybe I've just got a low tolerance for douchebaggery, but just everything he said grated on my ears.
I gotta power up if I'm gonna go toe-to-toe with Concrete Queen.
At one point, I even turned the sound off for a while just so I didn't have to listen to his rambles.
I think you might be exaggerating a little bit. I mean, yeah, he is pretty terrible, but he's not that bad.
Well, one thing this place tells us is that our sniper is a sniperette. It is definitely the best-smelling assassin's den you could ever be in.
Yeah, he's pretty bad. I think what they've tried to do is set him up as a cocky rebel, a fighter of causes. The problem is, if not handled correctly, it's very easy for a character like this to just become annoying. And it's not helped that most of the writing in Second Son is quite cheesy, even just plain bad at times.
We hit the town, we load up at the all-you-can-leech conduit power buffet, we maybe swing by the Space Needle, always wanted to see it, and then we're back home to save some lives.
And that's disappointing because the game has such high production values in every other way.
Yeah, I think the narrative problems begin with Delson's initial motivation, which is pretty weak, especially in contrast to the actions he does in the game. The story begins with a prisoner transport crash that sees the escape of some conduits. Delson soon discovers he can absorb conduit abilities. Then it's up to him and his equally annoying sheriff brother to attempt to bring down the game's villain, Augustine. So Delson's first motivation is to obtain the concrete power so he can then use that power to remove the concrete from the limbs of his tribe members who you haven't actually met, bar one.
The only way it's getting out is with the same power, I get it.
I don't get it. It just doesn't have the same comic book feel to the last two games.
I quite liked the setup. I mean, instantly you both fear and hate Augustine for the way she's treated the tribe. She is bad news, and over time you're driven to take her down.
You can't do this, you crazy, I've got rights!
And I have the legal authority to suspend those rights whenever I feel it's necessary, like now, for instance.
I think the bigger problem is how they've handled a character that can choose a good or evil path. If you do go evil, your sheriff brother obviously doesn't like the fact that you've become a mass murderer, but it doesn't have a huge effect on your relationship.
I told you to sneak around.
They started it!
You wonder why people hate bioterrorists?
You still bumble about on missions with him.
And we have liftoff.
Hey, follow my phone and don't be a dick!
I think if you can ignore all the clumsy storytelling, then there is some solid action to be had here, and visually, it's just incredible. It's one of the best looking next-gen games I've seen yet.
Oh, it's stunning, isn't it? I was actually surprised that the PS4 could do this kind of detail. The facial motion capture in particular is beautiful, and you can even see the tendons moving under their skin.
I have to go back to my office. Apparently, I'm getting a phone call.
Plus, I'm so glad they've kept that beautiful graphic novel style for the cutscenes.
They knew what the government would do to people like me, and they did it anyway.
Second Son is set in the small US city of Seattle, and you do see some nice sunsets and rainy weather, even a coffee shop or two. I love how they've crafted this world. It's such a crisp and shiny city with such interesting construction and layout, and when you see it from afar, you can't help but put the controller down and just soak it in for a bit.
It just looks stunning, doesn't it? And the particle effects, Hex. Oh, I was in floaty, explodey, dusty bit heaven. Normally I find it's things like lighting and smoke that puts pressure on gaming systems and slows it all down, but this was an orchestra of light, particles of movement, and it all just worked and flowed without skipping a beat.
Moving throughout the world is a joy as well. The controls are so responsive and finely tuned, whether Delson's fighting, climbing, or flying about. And of course, there's lots of goons and encampments to take out to really let you stretch out your superpower legs.
No!
Delson slowly acquires quite a repertoire of different conduit powers. You can switch between these abilities on the fly by feeding off objects in your environment. So if you're using smoke, which has good evade maneuvers and damage, you'll need to find a smokestack or a smoking car to recharge.
Good to go.
But if you want to run up walls, you'll need to find a neon sign, suck it out, and boom, you're a speedy disco. It's easy to scale buildings and get around with any ability set. And I do like that mechanic of having to search for a smokestack or neon to recharge in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, and it's nice to have that variety. There are some solid enemy types too. Heavy concrete goons are thrown into the mix, which will make a standard fight suddenly more stressful. And all their concrete shields and abilities are just awesome to look at and fight against. The game only has a handful of boss fights, but I found them pretty enjoyable.
I don't think any of the missions that you go on were particularly innovative or original though.
I'm not gonna hurt you!
You do have to track down a couple of conduits here and there, but the bulk of the missions are fighting the DUP, and I just found all of that so repetitive, Hex.
Yeah, but I think the combat is good enough to pull you through. Plus, I like that your approach to a fight is really quite different depending on whether you choose good or evil. If you're good, you'll need to be more cautious and carefully subdue enemies, causing as few casualties as possible. If you pick the evil path, it's all about missiles and explosions and executions. Personally, I think the good path is more fun and more strategic, Bajo.
Yeah, me too, but there is that reckless abandon of being the bad guy. There are a couple of other abilities that you pick up along the way, which we won't spoil for you, but they are very fun. I didn't like the tech trees much though. I just felt they were a bit too restrictive and too linear in how they unlock, like I was just going through the motions. When I got to the end of the game, I wondered what was the point if so much stuff was going to be locked off, just fill it out for me.
I don't know, I think it's a playstyle choice though. I mean, if you really take your time and collect as many shards as possible before you upgrade, then you're gonna have way more choices to make. I really liked that the good and evil actions you make in the game, both in gameplay and cutscene, also play into what abilities you can unlock. It's great to have that difference.
Yeah, and you know, as tired as a concept it is to have to go and hunt for all those hidden shinies around the world in a game like this, I did enjoy hunting down those blast shards.
Ugh, yeah, me too. Every time you see one, you've just got to alter your course to pick it up.
Yeah, especially if they're flying on a drone. Come here, you. But Hex, even though there are so many good parts to this game, you know, that impressive combat and those beautiful visuals, I just didn't really have that much fun with it. And I started to feel like this with Infamous 2 as well. Maybe I'm just getting a bit tired of this Crackdown-like superhero inner city formula. And there's just not that much that's remarkable about this city besides how beautiful it is, and the citizens derp out a fair bit.
Yeah, the civilian AI is pretty basic. You especially notice it if you're playing the good side. They love and cheer you constantly 1 minute. But if you injure someone, they run off and cower in fear. Then 10 seconds later, those same people are all cheering for you again.
I want to have your babies!
I really struggled scoring this, Hex, because it is such a beautiful game and everything just works so well, yet it's still incredibly formulaic, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I mean, sure, there are things it could have done better, but I was really won over by this gorgeous playground. And that fluid combat just lets you revel in having superpowers, and I had a lot of fun, so I'm giving it 8. So, did you name the game for this week? It was Justice League Task Force from 1995. Classic DC villain Darkseid is up to no good once again as he invades Earth. After destroying a military base, he unleashes an army of android Justice League clones, and it's your mission to clean up his mess, save the planet, and restore order. And it's our Name the Game because the SNES version was co-developed by Blizzard Entertainment, the same studio behind this week's Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft.
Speaking of Blizzard, next week we click it up in the dungeons of Diablo once again with its first expansion, Reaper of Souls.
No one can stop death.
And we take to the sky in the super stylish air combat of Luftrausers.
Plus, if you like your birds angry, you may want to check out Good Game Spawn Point this weekend on ABC3 as we have a look at Angry Birds Epic.
Until next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out. Do you know my favourite thing to do in Hearthstone?
What?
So when it's not your turn and the other person's trying to think hard about what cards to play and they have the turn, just spam emotes.
Yeah, you did that when we were playing.
Yeah,
I
works
hope that
really
made
well.
you feel better when I kicked your butt.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Twice.
He's overpowered.
Getting a little dim here.